I like my little vulture. I like the idea of salvage gameplay. I like the idea of us being able to scrape the ships for whatever reason. But often enough, finding salvage, finding the right pieces, the ship, even some of these missions, yeah, they can be rewarding. But perhaps one of the best pieces there is the salvage cleanups. The legal missions, the ones with the timer, so you actually can make some pretty nice money there. Of course, there are several types of missions. You can go for smaller vehicles, you can go for bigger vehicles. Today, we're picking the RSI constellation Andromeda. That is medium sized and pays out quite nicely 80k. The question is, how valuable is it to do these missions? A short answer, depending on how good you are at salvage and at, managing the salvage. If you know the locations that get often overlooked, if you are very thorough with your salvaging of every piece, because you do need to get it like 95% salvaged or so, all of its different parts. Now, we do have quite a lot of time, an hour, for this kind of vehicle. To be honest, you don't really need that much. If you are semi-decent, you should be able to do it with half an hour, maybe slightly more depending on how many small pieces or locations upon the ship or the surface locations of the ship that you overlooked. There are usually some small corners or areas of the ship, tight spots, which may be often overlooked. Now, the bad thing, of course, is that not all of it is reflected correctly, so it can be visually deceptive to just look at what areas seem to be scrapped. There are a few ways players try to make sure of it. Some say destroying the ship actually makes it a bit better for you to scrape some of these locations. Yeah, it can open up some doors or areas which otherwise might cover up some corners of the salvageable ship. From another perspective, you just don't want to go from one side of the ship to the other side of the ship. You want to scrape every angle, or as many angles as possible, because the angled surfaces often aren't salvaged by the beams themselves. So you mostly need to optimize this on flat surfaces. Starting from one side, moving slightly downwards or upwards, or just trying to make a circle or spin around the ship, covering most of the corners and areas. Only when you're not finding any more salvage on these flat surfaces or areas of the ship, it is semi-suggested that you should try to use the salvage beam from not so typical angles, as there may be some corners which might not get salvaged while you are aiming flat at the surface. Now, I know it is very unpleasant in some cases. They should actually reduce the amount of salvage you need to scrape, but there are some of these pieces that have some, or actually even a lot of salvage attached to them, while you clearly see or cannot find a spot where you could finish it. And thus there are really unpleasant angles which you need to often focus on. If you are thorough and know all the little corners, this mission shouldn't take more than 20-25 minutes. For me it took slightly less than 30, but I was also trying to collect some of these salvage crates which my ship was producing. Of course you want to use the braid option, as that is more time efficient, and perhaps not even collect any containers if you just want to get that 80k and don't really care about returning to Horizon or Hurston or any other major city where you could sell them. So even for a single person, there is quite a lot of time, and perhaps you could even do it with the slow salvage option, which would give you more crates. At first I wasn't really going for the crates, but in the end I was like, fine, why not? I have plenty of time to spare. So I did get 5, but if you are very optimal, I guess you can get like 7 or 8 or perhaps even more. So this was just extra 38k, making my total of something around 118,000, which wasn't too bad. Personally, I don't really suggest collecting salvage to sell them if you're doing this solo, as it is very time consuming for you to go back and forth, and eventually you will need to go and sell it, which will also take away time from other salvage missions or missions in general you might want to do. Perhaps if you're really good you can even do a hammerhead, but I'm gonna try and give it a shot and optimize that as best I can at some point. But for now, this was probably one of the best salvage missions out there, and you actually do have a reasonable amount of time even with this vulture and if you're doing it solo. Anyway, don't forget to subscribe, and thanks for watching.